one of the things I'm most proud of in my life is that I never let my dream die. I knew I was going to do it at some point in time, but I could have said, hey, I was a hospital administrator at the time. You know what? I'm making good money. This is a good job. I'm just going to do that. But I gave all that up, certainly with the support and encouragement of my family, to do what I felt was in my heart that God wanted me to do.
Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle, the inspiring podcast challenging norms and helping you redefine vulnerability as a strength. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford. Each episode of Vulnerability Muscle dives into a variety of topics such as mental health, social issues, and mindset shifts. We explore the power of vulnerability in fostering meaningful connections, healing, building resilience, and promoting personal growth. Sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable, but good workouts often are. So join us and flex that vulnerability muscle. Welcome to this episode of Vulnerability Muscle. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford. Today I have with me Terry Tucker. Terry is an author, speaker, and podcast guest on the topics of motivation, mindset, and self-development. He has a business administration degree from the Citadel, where he played Division I college basketball, and a master's degree from Boston University. Among his diverse professional roles, Terry has been a marketing executive, a hospital administrator, a SWAT hostage negotiator, a business owner, and for the past 13 years, a cancer warrior. Oh, wow. Which saw the amputation of his foot in 2018 and his leg in 2020. He is the author of the book Sustainable Excellence 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life, and a featured author in the book Perspectives on Cancer Stories of Healing, Hope, and Resilience. Terry has been published in Authority, Thrive Global, and Human Capital Leadership magazines, along with being quoted and highlighted in the books Your Blueprint for Purpose by John Creekmer and Audaciousness, Your Journey to Living a Bold and Authentic Life by Maribel Ortega and Helen Strong. Y'all, this man right here, I cannot wait for y'all to get to know Terry a little bit better. How you doing, Terry?
I am great, Reggie. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today.
I'm so excited as well, and the energy that I sense already on this call. I'm really excited to get deeper into your story and hear a little bit about the work that you do. But I just wanna open it up with, how's your heart? How's your heart?
How is my heart? My heart is open.
Mm.
And I am not an individual that shares. I'm very keep it close to the vest and things like that. And when I started, doing podcasts, I realized that if you wanted credibility, you had to be able to walk the walk in addition to talking the talk. And
Yeah.
so opening myself up was very hard for me. I mean, Reggie, my first podcast, I'd started a speaking business, COVID hit, and a friend of mine reached out and said, Terry, would you like to be a guest on my podcast? And I said, sure. What's a podcast? I had no idea what a podcast was. And Reggie, I was terrible. I mean, I had post-it notes all over the camera. He would ask me a question. I'd lean in. I'd read one of the post-it notes. I provided no value to the audience whatsoever, but I liked it. I liked the medium.
Yes.
I liked doing that. And it was, I thought back the first time I drove a car, I wasn't any good at it. The first time I cooked a meal, I think I
Yeah.
burned the water. The first time I studied algebra, I wasn't good at it, but I
Yep.
wanted to get good at it.
Yep.
So it was a process that I realized I had to open my heart in addition to talking about the things I'd experienced in my life.
Wow, I love that. I love that so much. And I can just imagine all the post-it notes everywhere and like the questions they may ask. Let me get them in order, like all of that. Like it's so real. It's so real. And I think like, so I don't send out questions beforehand because I don't know where the conversation is going. And so like, and I think that is vulnerable, just to see where it ends up and to let it be raw. Nothing is edited. It just comes out. And so I hope that you feel comfortable in where we end up, and that you know that this is just two humans talking, and there might be some other folks that hear it on the other end. But before we get deeper into it, I have a segment called What Comes to Mind. So you let me know the first thing that you think of.
Okay.
What comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability?
openness, laying it out there, saying, you know what, I will be vulnerable, I will be open to you because I want that connection. And that, for me, especially at this point in my life, as I'm probably coming on, in all honesty, towards the end of my life, I want that connection. There's a professor, a psychology professor at the University of Chicago, who does this experiment with his students. And the idea is, you go out and you get on a bus, and in 3 questions you go deep with somebody. So you sit down next to somebody. Hey, how you doing? I'm fine. How are you? That's question 1, and I'm just making this up. Question 2, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a doctor. Okay. Question 3, have you always wanted to be a doctor? Reggie, it doesn't matter what they say. They could say, no, I grew up on a farm and I wanted to be a veterinarian, but X, Y, and Z happened. Or, no, I didn't want to be a doctor, but my mother was a doctor and died of breast cancer at 40, and I wanted to follow in her footsteps and honor her. Whatever they tell you, now they're telling you their why, their
Mm,
mission, their purpose in life. And social media lets us stay on the top, stay on the
yep.
surface. We don't go deep with people. And I think that's what vulnerability is all about. It's opening yourself up to say, you may not agree with me, you may not like me, but you know what? This is me and who I am, and I'd like to give it to you, and hopefully you can give that to me as well. And you and I think, have done that just in the few minutes we've known each other.
Yes. I feel that 100%, and I think another layer of vulnerability is recognizing that whether you agree or like me or not, like, I still love me, and so I'm gonna still let that shine, and I'm gonna keep my heart open, and I'm gonna communicate. So I absolutely love that. Wow, thank you, Terry.
Sure.
What do you do to center yourself and ground yourself if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed or maybe even depressed?
I pray. I have a very strong faith in God, and I pray on those times. And I've been, and we may talk about this through my cancer journey. Through, like, I'm done. I'm totally depleted mentally, physically, emotionally. I'm done, God. I can't do this anymore. So when I get into those situations, my go-to thing is to pray.
Yes. So strong, so powerful. Faith is necessary. Wow. I cannot wait to to learn more. What is one of your favorite childhood memories?
So I grew up in Chicago, but we spent a little time in Columbus, Ohio. And my dad and my brothers and I built this. It wasn't quite a half court basketball court, but it was close enough for us. And it was blacktopped, and it was in our backyard, and it had a hoop. And some of the greatest memories are being, my youngest brother and my dad playing me. I'm the oldest, and my middle brother 2-on-2 in that backyard. And sports was such a big part of our lives growing up. I don't have any sisters. I have 2 brothers, and we were all college athletes. And even my middle brother was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA.
Wow.
So our whole life centered around sports. I mean, we played football, baseball, basketball until we got older and started to specialize. But it was just those times in the backyard. It wasn't anything, it was just having fun being with the family. And family is faith, family, and friends are really what my life has always been about.
Wow, wow, I love that, and I mean, that is so reminiscent of probably not with my siblings and well, yeah, some of my siblings, but, playing basketball until the sun goes down, and now we gotta find a light, and you're sweating, and your body's cramping up. It's like, those are some of the best times ever, and then all it took was this little round ball, like, in a
Yeah.
hoop. That's it.
Yeah. And just a
That's
hoop,
so
a hoop and a ball. That's all you need. And basketball is one of those sports where you don't need anybody else. It's
no.
not like football or baseball where you got to pass the ball no, it's basketball. You got a ball and a hoop. You can spend as much time as you want.
Wow, wow, wow. Tell me a little bit more about that. Growing up in Chicago, outside of playing basketball with the fam, like what else inspired you? What else influenced you while you were growing up?
I mean, honestly, Reggie, my parents. My parents used to do what I would call divide and conquer parenting, where I'd have a game on Thursday night at 5 o'clock at this location, and my brother would have a practice at 5 o'clock on Thursday night at that location. So dad's going with me, mom's going with my brother, and so we were all running in different directions. But Sunday nights were always the nights where it didn't. There were usually no games, no practices on Sundays, so that was family time. That was we're sitting down to a meal together. We're doing all that. And my parents taught my brothers and I the value, the importance of family, of loving each other, of caring for each other, of supporting each other. And my brothers and I are still close today. We talk all the time on the phone. They both live in Chicago now. And so it was just my story is not, my dad was an alcoholic and used to beat my mom and all. No, I had a wonderful childhood growing up. And that was provided by my parents because we were their inspiration. They did
Mhm.
everything for us. And so as they've gotten, my dad is dead, but my mom is still alive. As they've gotten older, it's like, okay, now it's our turn to reciprocate. It's our turn to help them. They did so much for us. Now it's our turn to kind of pay that back. So just
Wow.
being with the family was such a
Yeah.
great time growing up.
Yes, I love that, and I think it's such a testament to how healthy development occurs when you have two adults who love and dote on you and nurture you in that way. And even though there is split time because now you got this great athlete right here, this great athlete in person, two great people that you got to go and take care of and run around the city and do all of that. Like to feel that love and that support is I mean, like this is the energy that it creates and exudes. And I'm sure that the mindset that helped you develop growing up has definitely helped you through a lot of the journey in your life. So I'm grateful for your parents as well, and rest in peace to your pops for real.
Yeah.
Oh man, wow. So take me back. Like you got a story. You got, I mean, from the SWAT hostage negotiator, the speaker, the like, what stands out to you most, and what do you want to touch on? Because I think just so much from your background that I think is really interesting.
So I kind of had to give you the backstory. If you look at my resume, it kind of looks like a Super Ball went off in a room. It's just kind of all over the place. But there is a backstory. And so my paternal grandfather, my dad's dad, was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. And in
Wow.
1933, he was shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad, who was an infant at the time, always remembered the stories my grandmother told while he was growing up of that knock on the door of Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us, your husband's been shot. So when I
Wow.
expressed an interest in sort of following in my grandfather's footsteps, my dad was absolutely not. You're going to
Mm.
college, you're going to major in business, you're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live happily ever after. But but that's the life my father wanted me to lead. That's not the life I felt I was supposed to lead. So when I graduated from college, I moved home to find a job. And fortunately, I did. I found the job in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department. That was the good news. The bad news was I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. So,
Mm.
Reggie, when I graduated, I kind of had that first major life decision as an adult. I could have said, hey, Dad, yeah, I know you're dying. Sorry about that. But I'm going to go do my own thing and blaze my own trail in law enforcement, or out of love and respect for you, I will do what you want me to do. So,
Mhm.
understanding that backstory, my first two jobs were in business because it's what my dad wanted me to do. But then at 37, I made that major pivot in my life. And 37 is pretty old to becoming, to be getting into law enforcement, to becoming a cop. But it was my purpose. I knew I was supposed to do it. And I'll be honest with you, Reggie, I'll end with this. One of the things I'm most proud of in my life is that I never let my dream die. I
Yeah.
knew I was going to do it at some point in time, but I could have said, hey, I was a hospital administrator at the time. You know what? I'm making good money. This is a good job. I'm just going to do that. But I
Mhm.
gave all that up, certainly with the support and encouragement of my family, to do what I felt was in my heart that God wanted me to do. And so
Wow.
that's really being a police officer, being a SWAT hostage negotiator. If you ask me what I did with my life, that's what I would tell you.
Yeah. I mean, living in your purpose.
Yeah.
There's so much fulfillment in that. And like, you don't want to get to the end of your life and look back and say, man, what if? What if I had done that? What if I had just pursued that thing that was burning? It was a burning desire at one point. I think we as people, the little kid in us, it has a wish, it has a goal, and then life starts to say, well, you have these limitations, and like, I'm 5'9". You're not tall enough to play in the NBA, but there's some other folks that have played. There are folks who break through those limitations and live out that purpose. And it's like, wow, when you do that, the fulfillment that you get is so much more than if you go down a path that isn't meant for you. And so I love that you made that pivot even at 37. And I mean, you hear the Colonel Sanders story. He's what,
Yeah.
60 years old when he started KFC. And it's like, it's never too late. It's never too
It
late.
isn't. And I wish I would have said this. I don't know who said it, but the saying goes, some of the richest real estate in the world are our cemeteries because they're
Mm,
areas rich in businesses never started, books never written, and relationships never pursued. When it's your turn to go to the cemetery, don't have those regrets. Do the
wow.
things that you're supposed to do the things that are in your heart.
Well, listen, I'm gonna make sure I clip that with where you started that quote, and it's gonna sound like you said it. Somebody's gonna attribute it to Terry Tucker. So, that is powerful, and that reminds me of something that like recently came up for me of thinking about, the question of what is your greatest fear? And I used to answer it of it was very generic of like not reaching my potential. Like that's my greatest fear is not reaching my potential, failing and not reaching my potential. But I think that was very externally focused and I wasn't defining what that looked like. And it was very external. And I think now when I think about that question, it's very much to the point that you just made. I don't want to die with ideas and and thoughts and just wisdom words, whatever it may be, in here. Like, I want to express those things in the world, whether I create them or not, whether I make money from them or not, whether like I just want to express that in this lifetime and know that when it's all said and done for me, that there isn't a cemetery worth valuable insights that never were shared with the world. And so thank you for sharing that. Whoa.
Well, you're
Whoa.
doing that. You're doing this with your podcast.
Yeah.
You're getting that out into the world, and it's evergreen. It'll last forever. Long after you and I are gone, and things like that.
Yeah. That was one of the special parts about this is thinking about, generations to come and being able to go back. And I think video is so powerful. Like we got pictures from way back when, and a still shot is powerful in itself. But I've challenged myself to capture videos, even of just ordinary days. Like this is gonna be funny, but like one of my favorite sounds is the sound of my dog rumbling in the dog bowl and then chewing her food. And so I just like set my camera right there one day and recorded her. It sounds so weird, but I know that one day I won't hear that, at least from this dog. And I want to always remember that as it was in video form and to hear it, to see it. So I think there's something very powerful about video. So yeah, this will live on long beyond us. Oh man.
Yes.
Tell me what it is that you do as a SWAT hostage negotiator.
Yeah. What do we do? We try to save lives. I mean, in a sentence, it's about communicating. It's about understanding. I mean, Reggie, a lot of times we would get on scene and have no idea why this person had taken a gun and barricaded themselves or taken a hostage or whatever, like thing like that. So we would start with what was called tactical empathy. And I think today you can get rid of the word tactical. Just talk about empathy. And
Yes.
empathy is help me to understand what's going on, help me to understand where you're coming from, whatever it is, help me to understand the situation that we're in right now. Because, I mean, let's face it, if you're talking to me and your house is surrounded by the police, you're probably having the worst day of your life. So, that understanding, and again, the important word there is understanding. It's not agreeing. I mean, if I was talking to a homicide suspect that just murdered three people, I wasn't going to be like, oh yeah, I totally agree that you should have done. No,
Mhm.
but understanding leads to trust, and
Yeah.
trust leads me to a point where hopefully I can get you out safely. So tactical empathy, very important for what we did. And I'll give you this because I think this is important. This is how we as human beings communicate. And we were all given this as hostage negotiators. I'll tell you what it was, tell you why we got it, and then I'll tell you kind of how it worked in the end. So it was a formula on how human beings communicate with each other. And that formula was 73855. So 7% of how we communicate a message are the words that we use. And think how many times you said something, be like, ooh, I wish I hadn't said that, or I wish I would have said that differently. That's only 7% of how that message comes across. 38% is the tone of voice that you use. Are you really excited and you're talking like that and you can't wait to get it out? Or are you kind of doing the Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh where, oh, this is terrible, nothing's going to work? What's your tone of voice with those words? And then 55%, so more than half of how that message comes across is your body language and your facial expressions. And the reason they gave that to us is because if somebody was barricaded in a room with a gun, I was not in the room with them. That would have not been safe for us. So we didn't have the luxury of that 55%. We didn't
Wow.
have the luxury of saying something to someone and see them kind of roll their eyes and be like, what an idiot, Terry. I can't believe you said that to me. So we had to get good based on certainly what people were saying, but also what they weren't saying and how they were saying it. And there's a whole lot of other things we can talk about, but I'll end with this. We would stay away from why questions. Because
Mhm.
think about when you were growing up. I know when I was
Judgmental.
growing up, you would do
Yeah.
something stupid and your parents would be like, Reggie, why did you do that? Terry, why did you do that? Why questions sound accusatory. So if I said to you, Reggie, why did you wear that shirt today? Oh, wait a minute. Does Terry not like the shirt that I'm wearing?
Mhm.
I can get to the same answer by using how or what questions. Reggie, what made you decide to wear that shirt today? That question lands softer and gets me to a point where the person isn't all amped up like, well, why do you not like my shirt? Should I have worn something different? No. So how and what questions were something that we used as we communicated with people.
Yes, I love that, and I love it. It's in the same approach to trauma informed care. I mean, we talk about that same tactic. When you say tactical empathy, that empathy,
Yeah.
it's getting to understand, and it's coming from a place not of judgment, of curiosity, of true curiosity, of getting to know from a compassionate place what may be going on in a person's life or in a person's mind to lead them to behavior. And wow, it's amazing to think that that 55% is not there for you when it that's such a critical piece of all of our communication. And I think about it, like if you put a movie on mute, or if you don't see, if you could just see some people from across the room and just watch them, you get a sense of, okay, they like each other or they don't like each other, or this person's kind of angry. And I think I had to develop a sense of that very early in life, of just being able to observe and understand whether or not that person over there has intention, or malintention or not, just in the environment that I grew up in. And I catch myself now just like watching people when I can't hear them, and seeing what their body language is communicating. And it's a helpful tool, I think. I think part of mine was very hyper vigilance, but I think there is a piece that is very helpful. But wow, I want
I
to
mean, can
keep
you can
talking.
you look at it sounds like you can because I can look at people and just look at their face and say, they're not having a good
Hmm.
day or something's wrong
Yeah,
or they don't feel
yeah,
good. Can you do that
yeah.
too?
I can, and I think sometimes I will use that to try to brighten up somebody's day, and
Mhm.
just I don't know what, and sometimes it could be divine. It can be just an intuition, but it's often what I'm seeing or what I'm feeling, sensing from that person. And it's like, I wanted to say this to you, or I wanted to leave you with this, or give you this, whatever it may be. And you can turn a person's day around just by observing and what you see. And so, that's super cool. It reminds me. So I psychology for me was something that I feel like I was drawn to, because I wanted to study it going into college, but I ended up not, and deviating from that path. And then I was doing an internship later on in college, like right before my senior year, and I had this man who was helping a lot of entrepreneurs with their pitch, kind of
Mhm.
like the Shark Tank pitch.
Mhm.
And he had experience as an FBI negotiator and all these things, and he took me aside and said, "You're very hard to read." And I didn't understand what he meant, but he's like just showing me pictures that he had been taking of me for a while and of other people. And he's like, "What do you think this person's thinking here?" Or what do you and he's just going through and I'm like, guessing and thinking. He's like, "But you, like, I don't know. I don't have a good read on you." And he started teaching me about micro expressions, not aggressions, micro expressions.
Expressions.
And Paul Ekman was the author that he introduced me to, and I got to reading and reading and reading all of his literature about micro expressions. And he's deemed the human lie detector. And again, for me, hypervigilance and not trusting the world, and that was like I ate that stuff up for those purposes. But I think it's still it fed something that was very innate in me, well nurtured in me through the environment to see people and understand people. And I love that. That's the work that you're in, and sensing the soul that you are. I'm glad to have a person like you in that role.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was something I was drawn to. I mean, we also trained with the FBI's hostage negotiation team and things like that. And you 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 pick up on people. I mean, you pick up on people. If you're a decent cop, you're going to pick up on people. They're not having a good day. They're lying. Most people lied to you as cops. I mean, it's they just did, and you knew that, and you took it for what it was. But unless you were an idiot, you didn't get into law enforcement, pardon my French, to kick butt and take names, because you'd always run across somebody who's bigger, taller, stronger, the better than you. It was about helping and being able to read people. And it's like, you're not having a good, and even an expression I use now, and this is something that Chris Voss, I wrote a great book, I would recommend it, which just Never Split the Difference. That's the name of it.
Mhm.
Great book.
Yeah.
Great book. He was an FBI hostage negotiator. Just just to look at people when they say something, even if they say something negative, they're yelling at you, or they say something positive. A great way to get more information is to just look at them and say, "Seems like you have a reason for saying that," and then go silent.
Mhm.
Be quiet,
Mhm.
because what that does is, one, it takes you take the power back in that relationship, and two, it'll get them to start talking again because we don't like silence. And the more
Mhm.
people talk, what do they give you? They give you information. Maybe it's information you can use, maybe it's not, but it's more information. And it works as a hostage negotiator, but it also works to buy a car. Or if you're in a business and you're trying to negotiate a deal with another company, the more information you have, the better offer you can make. And one of the things Voss talks about in his book is that no deal is better than a bad deal. And one of the things that we used to realize in hostage negotiation is that a yes without a how is a no.
Mm.
So if
Explain
you
that.
know, I mean,
Explain
think
that.
about somebody. We're old enough. My wife and I, we still have a house phone. So the phone rings and some guy's trying to sell you siding, and he calls like 15 times, and you get so exasperated. What do you say? Oh yeah, sure, fine. Just come out and give me an estimate. But what's not there is the how. I'm going to have my service manager call and set up a time or whatever it ends up being. So a yes without a how is a no. So getting somebody to say yes is good, but getting them to say yes and then say, well, my marketing people will reach out to you or my finance person is going to now there's the how with it. That's a true yes. Otherwise it's
Mm.
a no.
Wow. You just gave me this epiphany. So I'm in Nashville, and we have this thing called the Nashville No, which is a yes.
Okay.
Somebody and let's meet, let's talk about that. Let's do that deal. Let's, da da da. And it's like, yeah, let's do that. And then you drift off and there's no communication after that. There's, kind of doors are shut, and it may be in other cities, but it's common here where that happens. And so the Nashville no. But I think, taking that step further and getting the details of the how and the process that comes after that yes, would eliminate that. And honestly, I think, if you get to that point and somebody's true answer is no, going through the process, walking through all of that, they may just straight up say no instead of saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna make that happen." So I like
Yeah.
that. I
But
like that.
it's interesting you say that because based on the name of your show, with vulnerability, if we say yes, we become vulnerable because I've
Mhm.
just committed to something. It's a
Yeah.
vulnerability thing. So a better way to make people feel better and to still kind of get what you want is to ask questions that are designed to say to have a no answer. Would I be off base if I made a comment here? Oh no, Terry, go ahead and do that because you just now they just said no. No makes you feel in control, makes you feel comfortable. Yes makes you vulnerable. So
Mhm.
ask questions in a way that elicits the no answer and lead those people down the path that you want them to go.
Terry, do you have a master class in negotiating?
No, I do not.
'Cause that's so good. I love it. This is cool. I wanna switch gears a little bit and talk about your battle with cancer and how that what mindset got you through those times and to the amputations to the lifestyle changes to all of that. Like, can you speak to that experience in that time in life?
Sure. So I was a girls' high school basketball coach. I was 51 years old. Have a callus break open on the bottom of my left foot, and initially don't think much of it because as a coach you're on your feet a lot. But after a few weeks of it not healing, I went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine, and he took an X-ray and he said, "Terry, I think you have a cyst in there, and I can cut it out." And he did, and he showed it to me, a little gelatin sac with some white fat in it, no dark spots, no blood, nothing to give either one of us concern. But fortunately or unfortunately, he sends it off to pathology to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I get the call from him. And as I mentioned, he's a friend of mine. And Reggie, the more difficulty he's having explaining to me what's going on, the more frightened, the more scared I'm getting. Until finally he just laid it out for me. He said, Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years and I have never seen the form of cancer you have. I have an incredibly rare form of melanoma that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. Mine appeared on the bottom of my foot. And he said, you need to go to MD Anderson Cancer Center and be
Wow.
treated. And I did. They excised, they surgically removed the bottom part of my foot where my tumor was and all the lymph nodes in my groin. And then they looked at me and said, you'll more than likely be dead in 2 years. We have
Oh,
nothing to offer you other than surgery. And I thought, well, you gave me a death sentence. How can I try to turn that death sentence into a life sentence?
mm,
And Reggie, don't get me wrong. And I don't want your audience to think that I mean, you're looking at me now. There's no S on my chest. I do not have a cape and fly around with magical powers. I went through all the stages we would associate with grief. First it was denial. I can't possibly have cancer. I've done everything right in my life. Then it was anger. I can't possibly have cancer. I've done everything right in my life. And then there was a bargaining period. Our daughter was in high school at the time. It's like, okay, God, please let me live long enough to see her graduate from high school. And then I got down. I got depressed. I felt sorry for myself. And then I just came out the other end and said, this sucks, but I'm going to have to embrace the suck. I do not like the cards that I've been dealt, but I'm going to have to play these cards to the best of my ability. And honestly, that's what I've been trying to do for the last 13 years of my life.
wow. Wow, I think there's something so powerful about going through the stages of grief and embracing them for what they are. Like I've grieved a lot of loss of identity, of loss of people, of loss of relationships, and it rings true every time. They're those stages are real, and trying to run away or deny the stages or the process, it prevents you from getting to that point or that place where you are able to accept and then start your healing journey with a different mindset. And wow, wow. What inspiration did you gain, or what did you learn about yourself through that process of the person that you were, the man that you were?
I guess what got me through it, and we sort of touched on it earlier, or what I call my 3 F's: faith, family, and friends. I have a very strong faith in God. And I remember because there was nothing to offer me, my doctor put me on this drug called interferon. and I took a weekly interferon injection. And the side effects of the interferon were I had terrible flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. And I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having a horrible case of the
Wow.
flu every week for 5 years and knowing this was not a cure. This was, as my doctor used to say, we're just kicking the can down the road and trying to buy you more time. And so there was a point, honestly, Reggie, where I felt there was sort of two camps. There was the living and there was the not dying. And I was in the not dying camp. I didn't feel I was living at all. And I begged God to take me out of this. I'm like, look, I am so sick of being sick. Just let my life end. Let my family move on with their lives. But God didn't do that. He gave me the strength to go on. And then I'll tell you kind of a funny story. The family portion of it. After I had my leg amputated, my doctor wanted to start me on chemotherapy for the tumors that I still have in my lungs. And I looked at him and I said, "Is it going to save my life?" He said, "Probably not, but it might buy you some more time." And I said, "Well, if the end's going to be the same, if I'm going to die whether I take chemo or not, I don't think I want to do it." But I go home, and it's kind of a funny story. But I go home and I tell my wife and daughter about what the doctor's recommending. And my daughter's immediately, "All right, we need a family meeting." I'm like, "Family meeting? There's three of us. It's not like we got a board here or something like that, you know?" So we sit around the kitchen table and individually talk about me having chemotherapy and how we feel about it. And when that's over, my daughter's like, "All right, let's take a vote. How many people want dad to have chemotherapy?" And my wife and daughter raise their hand. I'm like, "Wait a minute. Am I getting outvoted for something I don't want to do?" But Reggie, I remembered when I was back in the police academy, our defensive tactics instructor used to have us bring a photograph of the people we loved the most to class. And as we were learning different techniques to defend ourselves, we were to look at that photograph
Mm,
because he reasoned you will fight harder for the people you love than you will fight for yourself.
mm.
So I took chemotherapy not because I wanted to, but because I love my wife and daughter more than I love myself. And in hindsight, it was the bridge that got me to where I am today with the clinical trial drug. And then I'll end with this. Friends, I mean, there are people that when I got cancer, I was 100% sure they would be with me. They would be in the foxhole. And they were like, "Terry, I can't deal with this. I
Wow.
can't deal with you as a relatively young man and still in my early 50s dealing with cancer." And then there have also been people that honestly, Reggie, I never thought they would be with me that haven't left my side in the 13 years that I've been doing this.
Wow.
So faith, family, and friends are really what has supported me and gotten me through these last 13 years.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And you said something very profound that I think will resonate with a lot of people is that the love that you have for your wife and your daughter was exceeded the love that you have for yourself. And I think a lot of people sense that and feel that, and when it's somebody else on the line, I'll step up harder than I will for myself. And I think one of my goals for my own life and for to spread out there in the world is to find that to equate to find the equation where those things are equal, where we fight for ourselves just as much. I don't know if we're built that way. I don't know, but I think so much of our conditioning and society makes us not love ourselves as much as we love others. And I think that is something that I'm finding in my journey has been extremely healing, is to love myself just as much, if not more, than everyone else. Not in a vain way, not in a conceited way, but just in a pure love for self.
Yeah,
And
you have value,
yes.
and you do. And it's give me another kind of funny story. I did a podcast with a guy who was an NFL player. Played It was a big guy, like 6'8", like 310 pounds. Was a lineman for the Titans and the Steelers and a couple other teams. And he had a podcast, and I was on his podcast. And afterwards, we were talking, and he said, "Terry, when I started my podcast, I didn't think anybody would care. I didn't think anybody would listen to what I had to say." And I said, "Marcus, you made it to the pinnacle of your sport. I mean, nobody makes it to the NFL. I mean, and you made it, and you were there for a number of years." His brother's also in the Pro Football Hall of
Is this
Fame.
are
And I
these the
said, "Marcus,
Ogden brothers?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah." And I said, "Marcus, how could you not think you had value that you could bring to the table?" I mean, it just goes to show you that even the best of us at times kind of feel like we're inadequate and we don't have
Yes.
anything to offer. You do. Your story matters.
Yes. Oh, shout out to Marcus Ogden. Get authentic with Marcus Ogden.
Yeah.
I was on that podcast too, so I'm gonna go listen to your
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
I'm excited, but yes, he has an amazing podcast, an amazing way of. One thing that I was really impressed. It was the first time where he was giving like live, like on the spot recaps of like different segments of the podcast for the
Okay.
listener. It was really cool. It was a really awesome experience. But like you said, amazing in so many areas of life, but had that feeling for himself.
Exactly.
And it's hard. Oh man.
Yeah.
You've developed something to help people. Maybe people like Marcus, maybe people like me, maybe people out there in the world to live extraordinary lives. The four truths. Tell us about what the four truths are and how you implement that into people's lives.
Sure. So the four truths are something I came up with. I have them on a post-it note here in my office. So I see them multiple times during the day and they constantly get reinforced in my mind. And they're just one sentence each. And I'll give them to you and we can talk about some or all of them. The first one is control your mind or your mind is going to control you. The second one is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more resilient individual. The third one is I kind of look at as sort of a legacy type of truth. And it's this: what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then the last one, I think, is pretty self explanatory. As long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And Reggie, I look at these as sort of the bedrock of my soul. I just think they're a good place to start to try to build a quality life from. So I incorporate them in my life every single day. And I used to think, and I've been asked, are there's one more important than the other? And I used to say no. But the more I read, the more I grew, the more I learned. I really think that first one, control your mind or your mind is going to control you. It's the overarching thing. If you can't control your mind, all the rest of them kind of go by the wayside.
Yeah.
So be able to control your mind, use that pain and difficulty to make you stronger.
I think I would agree with one being in so powerful when you think about as a man thinketh. If you think
Yeah,
about the philosophers over time, it's how strong it's the power of the mind,
yeah,
the law of attraction, the power of positive thinking. Like those are universal truths. Those are universal laws that shape the way that we live, and so I think that one is definitely powerful. I wanted you said the last one is self-explanatory, and I wanted to ask how do you view it if it's if the first sentence is the opposite. So if you do quit, can that second still be true?
I don't think so. I, I mean, I've never thought about it that way. If you do quit, you can never be defeated. I don't think so. I think if you quit, if you give up on yourself, I mean the way it's written, the way that it resonates with me is this: that I mean, someday my pain is going to end. It may end through, surgery. It may end through the development of some new medication. In all honesty, it may end when I die. But if I quit, if I give up, if I give in to pain, then pain is always going to be part of my life.
Mm,
So I don't I don't want to give into that
mm,
because I don't want to have that pain. I mean, don't get me wrong, pain has caused me to grow, it's caused me to develop, it's made me a better human being. And I will say two quick things that I've learned from this, from cancer, is number one, I don't think you truly know yourself until you've been tested by
yeah.
some form of adversity in your life. It doesn't have to be cancer like mine has, but some form of adversity. And secondly, cancer's made me a better human being. I've been
Mm,
asked if you could live your life over again without cancer, would you do it? And honestly, Reggie, I think I'd go through my amputations. I think I'd go through everything I've had all over again because cancer has made me that much better of a person than I think I would be today had I not had that adversity in my life.
wow. Wow. That is extremely powerful. And I think With the question that I asked, I think it may be a reframe around what you are actually quitting or what the desired goal is, right? Like if it's a deviation or a pivot within the same goal or within the same, end objective, then that's not quitting, it's
No,
pivoting.
yeah,
Um, so 'cause for you, right? Like starting a career in business and marketing and things like that to then being in law enforcement, you didn't quit something that you were ultimately striving toward. Like that was the deviation to go down that route. And so I think it's deeper when I think of it philosophically of what we're ultimately destined for. And I like how you put that. But yeah, to have such appreciation for cancer and to realize that you wouldn't be the man that you are today takes tremendous wisdom and courage. And I know that not everyone is going to look at it that way, and that's not to say that somebody else's view is wrong, but I think there's something powerful in the mindset that you have when it comes to that. It's really
absolutely.
powerful.
Yeah,
Wow. And I think it gets you through so many tough days, like so many hard times when you could sit there and be upset about the reality of things, but that's not going to change that reality. So I'm
it,
curious, what are some of your daily habits, some of your daily things to get your mind right, to get your body right in the new state that it's in? Like, what are some of the things that you do now that are a little different than before?
I read a lot today. I enjoyed reading, but not to the point where I mean, I love books. I love biographies, especially. I love to know what makes people tick. Why did Harry Truman decide to drop the atomic bomb on the Japanese during World War? Why did these people do what they do? And what can I learn from that? What was their mindset? How did they feel? I mean, you look at a guy like Harry Truman who became president after Roosevelt died. Truman never expected to be president. He'd failed at almost everything he did in his life before that. Even when he became president, his wife wouldn't live in the White House with him. She went back to Missouri and lived in their house. I mean, but he was probably one of our greatest presidents, and so there's something to be said for that. So I just, I mean, I do that. I spend at least a couple hours every day. I have a breathing practice that I do. I have a meditation practice that I do. And then I spend a considerable amount of time in prayer because I've met so many people with cancer, different kinds of cancer through this journey that I've been on, that I pray for them. I pray for the nurses, the doctors, the people that take care of me, my family. I can never be grateful enough. I can never ask God enough for what He's given me, and also what I would hope He would give other people, because I've seen people suffer terribly. And and I'll end with this, and this kind of goes back to what you and I were talking about: being seen, seeing people. When I go every 6 weeks now for my treatment. It used to be every 3 weeks for the entire week at the hospital.
Mm,
And you sit in the waiting room and you're waiting to be called back, and you can tell somebody who's new. This is their first time. They come in and they've got that deer in the headlights, and they're scared. And am I going to die? Is this going to work? How much suffering am I going to go through? What pain am I going to endure? And they're going through that, and I can just see it on their face. I've been doing this long enough, and I just kind of wheel over in my wheelchair and be like, "Hi, how you doing? I'm Terry." And it's almost like somebody sees me. I mean, of course they see me. I'm in a room with 20 other people waiting to get called back, but no, nobody really sees me. Yes, another human being sees me, and if I get called back, I'll be like, you know what? These are the best nurses. They're going to take care of you. Everything's going to be okay. And you can
wow.
just tell it's that. Oh, okay. I
Mm,
got I got a different perspective on it, and that's those kind of things are important to me. A
yeah,
100 years from now, nobody's going to remember I was here. But today, I want to have those connections with other human beings.
yeah. You just made me think of the Maya Angelou quote of people will forget the words that you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And it goes back to what you said about the negotiation. Like 7% are the words that you said. People are going to forget that 7%, but they're going to remember how you made them feel in that moment when they were scared, terrified out of their minds, first time in that waiting room, stepping back into that space of uncertainty, and to have your presence to reassure them, to calm them, to be light for them in that moment is so beautiful. So thank you. Thank you for showing up in that way for humanity. That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Can you tell us a little bit of what people could get from your book, Sustainable Excellence? What insights, what practical guidance you have there?
Sure. So, I never expected to write a book. Honestly, Reggie, I never wanted to write a book. It was, and this is kind of fun. There's an old joke that says when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. So God has never talked to me and said, "Hey, Terry, write a book." But what I think God has done, and this has happened several times in my life, where He puts enough people in my path that start to make the same suggestion over and over and over again. And people started to do this. Terry, you should write a book. Terry, you should write a book. And I'm old enough now that I pay attention when those things happen. And Sustainable Excellence is really a book born out of two conversations I had. One was with a former player that I had coached in high school who moved to the area in Colorado with her fiance, where my wife and I live. And the four of us had dinner one night. And I remember saying to her after dinner that I was excited that she was living close and I could watch her find and live her purpose. And Reggie, she got real quiet for a while. And then she looked at me and she said, "Well, coach, what do you think my purpose is?" I said, "I have absolutely no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth, using your unique gifts and talents, and living that reason." So that was one conversation. And then the other one was with a young man in college who reached out to me on social media. And he said, "Terry, what do you think of the most important things I should learn, not to just be successful in my job or in business, but to be successful in life?" And I didn't want to give him the, get up early, work hard, help others. I didn't want to give him sort of the cliches we already know. So I spent some time taking some notes and eventually kind of had these 10 thoughts, these 10 ideas, these 10 principles. And so I sent them to him. And then I stepped back and I was like, well, I got a life story that fits underneath that principle, or I
Mhm.
know somebody whose life emulates this principle. So, literally, during the 4 to 5 month period where I was healing after I had my leg amputated, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories, and they're real stories underneath each of the principles. And that's how sustainable excellence came to be. And I'll give you one of the principles. And it's this. And I put it in there because I've done it in my life and I'm not proud that I've done it. And it's the principle goes like this. Oh, shoot, it just went right out of my head.
It's all good. That's
That's what
human.
happens when you get old, Reggie. Oh, here it is. I got it. Sorry. Most people think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. And I know I've done that in my life. I wanted to start a project or get involved in a business, and you kind of pull back and you're like, "Ooh, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not smart enough, or maybe I don't have enough information, or what will people say about me if I fail?" That's thinking with our fears and insecurities. That's not thinking with our minds.
Wow. Wow, mic drop. I love that. I love that. You keep making me like I am usually very terrible and I'm probably misquoting all these things, but I'm terrible at quotes and even like thinking about quotes. But another thing that came up when you were telling the story about the player that you had coached is that people live two lives. One starts at birth and the other starts when they figure out why they were born. Let me
Mark,
re-say that.
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain?
Mark Twain
Shout
said
out
that.
to Mark
The two
Twain.
most important days of our lives, the day we're born and the day we
They
figure out
figure
why.
out why.
Yeah. Great quote.
Yes. And I think so much of this conversation has been around that purpose of figuring out why we were put here and to live in that, to walk in that, and to use that to find that extraordinary life that we're meant to live, that we're supposed to live. And I'm so glad that you have taken the pain in your life and you've alchemized that. You've turned that into so much purpose. You're helping people. You're helping better yourself, your family, your friends, and you're doing it all through your faith. And I think that your life and your legacy will live on long beyond your years. And I cannot wait to continue to follow your journey and hear more about what great things that you do and the people that you impact. Are
Well, I
there,
appreciate that, Reggie. I mean, this
yeah,
this has been a lot of fun talking with you.
it has been. It has been. And so before we hop out of here, I have a segment where it's just fill in the blank. And
Super.
so you let me know as brief or as long as you want to answer. But the first is vulnerability makes me feel blank.
Scared.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm honest, I mean, I think it makes you feel scared, but it also allows you the opportunity to overcome that fear and to give a part of yourself to another human being that maybe you wouldn't have done otherwise.
Mm. Pain has taught me blank.
Pain has taught me that I am so much more than that. And if you don't mind, I'll tell you a quick story. Hopefully it'll be quick. I don't do anything quick,
It's
but
all
it's a
good.
true story. It happened back in the 1950s at Johns Hopkins University here in the United States. It's a guy by the name of Richter, a professor there by the name of Richter. And he was doing an experiment with rats. And he wanted to see how long the average rat could tread water. And the average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes before it sunk and drowned. He took another group of rats and he put them in another tank of water. But this time he watched them. And as the rats started to struggle, and just before they sank and drowned, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he took the exact same rats and put them in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, on average, those rats treaded water for 60 hours. Now think about that. The first time, 15 minutes. It's not like you're going to flunk a test or, you're going to break up with your girlfriend or your marriage is going to be over. No, you're going to die. And the second time around, 60 hours, which taught me two things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives. And number two, I think we all have a breaking point, but I think that breaking point is so much further down the road than we ever let ourselves admit. So, and it kind of goes back to control your mind. Your mind is going to control you. Your body's going to say this hurts and your brain is going to say knock it off. But if you can push through, pain will lead you to being a better human being.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm one who, like, when people say, long story short, I'm like, no, give me the long story. I want the long
Well, you kind of
story.
got it.
My greatest superpower is blank.
I see people. I just don't see them. I see who they are. I see their soul.
Hmm. Yeah. If I could tell anyone something, or if I could to give one piece of advice to someone feeling defeated in life right now, it would be blank.
Actually, two things come to mind. I'm going to tell you both of them.
Hmm.
So the first one is this. It's a line from a book called Farewell to Arms, written by a man by the name of Ernest Hemingway. Farewell to Arms is kind of a semi-autobiographical book about Hemingway's time as an ambulance driver for the Italian army during World War I. And the line is this: life breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. So life is going to beat us all to our knees from time to time. But if you can keep going, you will come out the end of that a stronger, a more determined individual. And the second thing is this: I really believe it's more important who you work with and who you work for than it is the work that you do. Find people that care about you, find people that are willing to invest in you, find people that want to see you succeed, hitch your wagon to those people, and climb your mountains together.
Let's go. Wow. Wow. So good, Terry. You've given so many great gems and so much great motivation with your mindset and the way that you've approached very difficult parts of your life and leaning on faith, family, and friends. I think I'm gonna carry that and just very thankful for this time. Are there any last words, any things that you want to get off your chest, any things you want to share with the audience before we head out?
Can I tell you one more story?
Please.
So I've always been a big fan of westerns growing up, and when I was young, my mom and dad used to let me stay up late and watch, Bonanza and Gunsmoke. And my favorite was Wild Wild West. And I'm sure your audience is like, what are those shows? Those are old, old shows. 1993, the movie Tombstone came out. You may have seen it. It was a huge blockbuster. It starred Val Kilmer as a man by the name of John Doc Holliday and Kurt Russell as a man by the name of Wyatt Earp. Now, Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp were two living, breathing human beings who walked on the face of the earth. They're not made up characters for the movie. And Doc was called Doc because he was a dentist by trade, but pretty much Doc Holliday was a gunslinger and a card shark. And Wyatt Earp had been some form of a lawman almost his entire life. And so these two men from entirely opposite, entirely divergent backgrounds somehow come together and form this very close friendship. And at the end of the movie, Doc Holliday is dying at a sanitarium in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, which is about 3 hours from where I live. And the real Doc Holliday died at that sanitarium. Wyatt, at this point in his life, is destitute. He has no money, he has no job, he has no prospects for a job. So every day he comes to play cards with Doc, and the two men pass the time. And in this scene, they're talking about what they want out of life. And Doc says, when I was younger, I was in love with my cousin, but she joined a convent over the affair. And then he looks at Wyatt and he says, what about you, Wyatt? What do you want? And Wyatt looks at him and says, I just want to lead a normal life. And Doc's reply is, there's no normal, there's just life. And get on with living yours. So, Reggie, everybody who's listening to us out there right now that thinks, oh, well, when this happens, I'll have a successful life. Or when that happens, I'll have a significant life. Or when this happens, I'll be prosperous. What I'm going to say to you is this: don't wait. Don't wait for life to come to you. Get out there, find the reason you were put on the face of this earth, use your unique gifts and talents, and live that reason. Because if you do, at the end of your life, I'm going to promise you two things. Number one, you're going to be a whole lot more happy. And number two, you're going to have a whole lot more peace in your heart.
Wow. Terry, how can people reach you and connect with you, work with you? Give us some contact information.
Yeah, the easiest way to do it is I have a blog/website called Motivational Check. You can reach out to me at motivationalcheck.com.
Definitely. Terry, this has been so fulfilling. I'm so grateful for this time. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. With all the things that you could be doing and all the places you could be, I appreciate you being here with me, embracing vulnerability.
Well, Reggie, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it. This has been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of Vulnerability Muscle. If you've enjoyed these conversations around vulnerability, please consider leaving a review. Your feedback not only motivates us to continue to do the work that we do, but it allows other people to witness the power of vulnerability. Share your thoughts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And don't forget to spread the word. You can follow us at Vulnerability Muscle on Instagram and me personally at Reggie D Ford across all platforms. Visit vulnerabilitymuscle.com for additional resources and support. And remember, embracing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is the source of your greatest strength. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but most workouts are. So keep flexing that vulnerability muscle.